Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the September AI-SIG meeting. A couple of announcements here before we start. The next meeting next month in October will be on Monday, October the 20th. And Tom and I kind of talked this over and decided that from this point forward, we're going to have the monthly meeting on the third Monday of each month. So that'll make it a little simpler rather than trying to
bother you. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
My bad. No problem.
Okay.
I believe that would be October 18th then.
Oh, I'm sorry, October 18th. Today's the 20th. October 18th. And then from there forward, the third Monday of each month. So you can kind of keep that in the back of your mind. Second thing is we've had some really good images posted to the TAA forum recently. And I like to pass those images along to David Rossiter so he can include them in the Desert Skies Bulletin. So when you guys post your images, whether you post a link to them or attach the image to the email, if you could send me a copy of the image in some small format, around 2 megabytes or something of that order, then I can pass that along to him and it'll be about the right size for inclusion in the newsletter. If you send me a 40 megabyte image, I have to do something with it in order to be able to even mail it to him. And last thing, I've gotten a lot of requests for assistance from individuals who are interested in getting started in imaging. Some of those come to the TAA website. And if you get those types of requests from individuals who know you or have looked at your images, I think a good idea is to refer them to join the TAA forum if they're members of the TAAA, because that way they're going to get included on most of the discourse that we toss around back and forth, because that's the mechanism that we've been using. So those are the three things I wanted to go over. Our main presentation this evening, Alex Woronow is going to tell us about his experience with the Stellina astrophotography device, and as well as some of the other devices that are similar that are available if you have the money to invest. And after that, we'll just have some open discussion, image sharing, questions, whatever is on your guys' mind. We don't have any imaging terms. Nobody volunteered for tonight, so we'll let that go for this meeting. So Alex, are you ready to tell us?
I hope so.
Okay, it's all yours.
Okay, I'm going to try the screen sharing. Let's see how that picks up. Okay, it's up there. So hopefully you're seeing my first slide, which is the introductory slide. If you're not, please yell. During the course of this talk, feel free to ask questions. Don't have to hold them to the end. Sometimes questions are better in context. And so let's try that. What I'm going to talk about this evening is the Stellina telescope. It's a new telescope, like I say, a brave new world. It makes astro-imaging and just simply sharing your telescope in a situation like an outreach program extraordinarily easy. And I'm going to go over some of the history of that scope, what it can do, and guess maybe some things that it can't do too. Okay, let's see if I can get this thing to move forward now. Okay, so what is a Stellina telescope? It's a telescope and deep sky imaging system. It's fully integrated, self-contained, and 100% automatic. It's got the telescope, the camera, geographic and star alignment. It finds out where it is and what it's pointing at in the sky. Has user-selected go-to capabilities for any target you want or any right ascension declination you want to put in. It has onboard image processing, and that includes image rejection, calibration, which isn't done the same way we normally do it, but it works pretty well, and it's fast. It has image alignment, stacking, and stretching, and it dithers the images also. And then what it does is it broadcasts those images from its own onboard Wi-Fi, which you can connect to any connected smart devices, whether it's your iPhone or an Android phone or the equivalent in tablets. It broadcasts the stacked images as it obtains them, one right after another, to those connected devices. It can also store off for every image it takes a raw FIS frame that you can use for later image processing, and in addition to any screen captures you do. It's lightweight, it's portable, and it allows this live streaming to multiple observers, which obviously has applications and outreach. It was developed and manufactured by a French company called Veonis. The company started in 2016, and its first scope was delivered, I think, in the fourth quarter of 2018, or maybe the first quarter of the following year. The units are constantly back ordered. I haven't seen anywhere where they are in stock and ready to send out. It's won several awards for innovation, and it's even been featured in the New York Museum of Modern Art's design story. As you can see, looking at this picture, it has a rather novel appearance to it for a telescope. If you want to bond with your Stellina, here's some of the questions you might ask yourself before investing in one. If you're into something like mechanical tinkering or software tinkering, it's probably not for you because it's automated, self-contained, and there are no real number of wires for you to connect and check and recheck. If you're into an impressive amount of astro stuff, that is, you want to have cameras all over the place and eyepieces in every suitcase, then it's not for you either. If you like looking into an eyepiece, it's definitely not for you. If you're into DSO imaging and want to do it easily, then it's definitely for you. Now, you want to image the solar system? No, it's not designed for that, sadly. If you're into image processing of DSOs, deep sky objects from subs, then this scope will work for you. If you want to share your hobby with others, it's definitely a good scope to use. And if you're just getting into observing and imaging and want to make a quick start, almost painless start, then it's definitely for you as well. So I just thought I'd start out with some pictures that were taken through the Stellina. These were taken not by me, but by a couple of people who ventured into the mid-desert in Africa and took the pictures from there, hence the southern hemisphere targets. This is the Tarantula Nebula, which is in the Large Magellanic Cloud. This is Centaurus A. It's a galaxy also in the southern hemisphere. Omega Centauri, something you can see from our latitude, but it's much better captured from the southern hemisphere. It's obviously a globular cluster. They even managed to image a comet. This is Comet Swan. And finally, the Jellyfish Nebula. These are pretty impressive to me for a small scope that's doing this all on its own without any human intervention during any of the capture. Here's some of the specs. It's a 25 pounds. Its largest dimension is only 19 inches. It runs on an internal battery or a powered 5-volt power supply externally if you wanted. It's only a 3-inch telescope, 80 millimeters, and it's f5. It has a 6.4 megapixel sensor. It's a Sony sensor that was really developed for surveillance. It goes slightly into the infrared, and it's a back illuminated, so it's quite sensitive. It has good quantum efficiency, therefore, 50 to 60%, which is high for a CMOS. And it has very low noise, which is also what's common for a CMOS. Let's see what else. It produces JPEG, FITs, and FITs and then TIFF files. And the FITs are 16-bit images. Field of view is about 1 degree. It has onboard digital zoom. So it has an equivalent magnification of either 50 or 100 for taking the images. It's on an azimuth mount. It has an image rotator for taking its pictures internally to compensate for the rotation that occurs with such a mount. Let's see, it automatically initializes and recognizes star fields from an onboard star chart or geometry of stars at least, automatic focusing, automatic pointing, and as I said, onboard image processing. It has a light pollution filter, and one of the first demonstrations of this instrument took place on the roof of a building in Las Vegas. And I'll show you one of the pictures taken from that roof. And you got to do a lot of light pollution filtering if you're in Las Vegas. Let's see what else. There's a dew heater. It has a tripod. It comes with a tripod, a Gitso, small Gitso tripod, and it's controlled by smartphone or tablet. And this deep sky objects are the main things. And I said already, it has automatic dithering, for instance. Okay, the selling points, things I considered at least, are that it's small, compact, portable, lightweight. They say it can fit in an overhead bin of an airplane. I certainly wouldn't put it there with everybody else's luggage jiggling around, but I guess you could. It's no fuss setup. As I said, it just talks to a smartphone or tablet, set it down, level it, and away it goes. It acquires images totally independently without your interference or help. And it communicates those images over Wi-Fi at a distance up to 30 feet, and that Wi-Fi is internal. And of course, you can always use a Wi-Fi extender if you had to reach a bigger crowd. You can share it real time. 20 other people can download the app and connect to the image being produced, but only one person controls the instrument at a time. You can relinquish that control to someone else if you wanted. As I said, it processes the images on board and can download a TIFF file, 16-bit TIFF, or it can download, you can store that on your local device. So anybody who's connected could store a 16-bit TIFF to their smart device at any time they wanted by just pushing a little button. Raw subs can also be downloaded. Let's see, there is some frame composition capability. You can zoom up to 2 times digital zoom, rotate and translate the field that you want to capture. Let's see, it's upgradable through software updates that are put out every 6 weeks or so, generally adding more targets to the list, though you can go to any target you want, since it also accepts right accession and declination destinations. It's got a high-end tripod, even though it's a very small one. It's a schizo systematic. And if you tried to purchase that tripod separately, it would cost you about $400 just for the tripod.
Hey, Alex?
Yeah.
Can you adapt it to a bigger tripod?
Yeah. I don't know. It does fit on a larger Gitso tripod, which you can buy separately for about $800. And I'm not sure whether the tripod head is something that commonly occurs in the market or not. I got the impression that there are other products out there besides Giza that would accommodate it. You have to do some research there. A lot of people go to a taller tripod. Actually, I like it on a short tripod. I just set it on a table out back and work from there. As I said, it works on a rechargeable battery, but you can hook up a 5-volt power supply. And it's good for a broad range of astronomy users. It's painless introduction to the field of astro-imaging and deep sky object observing. Here is a comparison between two images of the Dumbbell Nebula. The left one taken in Death Valley, which is a pretty dark and destitute place, desolate. And here's one from downtown Las Vegas. And I think that's rather remarkable because I don't think I'd ever even take my telescope to Las Vegas, no less expect to use it. But it does have a light pollution filter, so there's some hope for even city dwellers. Okay, here's the downsides. It's pricey. It's $4,000. But if you're getting into astronomy and astro-imaging, you're going to pay a lot of money, and you're going to end up with a lot of cameras sitting around your house that are no good anymore, and a lot of telescopes and mounts and everything else. It's an expensive hobby, and when you get deeply into it. The Stellina somewhat lacks flexibility in accepting physical accessories. You know, I never looked closely at mine, whether the front has a way to add a filter to it or not. What I'm going to say later suggests that it does. We'll find out next year when they're going to supposedly sell one or more filters that are meant to fit on it. It has a small aperture, about 3 inches, as I said, a short focal ratio, and so it's not for planetary imaging, even though I'll show you a planetary image later in this broadcast. But it is good for moderate deep sky imaging. The sensor is not cooled, which I haven't had any problems with, but I don't live in Tucson. Visited there just last week, and it's still 102 there. Right now here where I live in Silver City, it's around, I don't know what, 67 degrees, 65 degrees, something like that. Let's see what else. It has no daytime capability. If you set it up during the daytime, it just simply says it's daytime. I'm not going to run for you. And it stops. It has no manual slew yet. You can't push a button and say, make the telescope move left, right, up, down. That's not available yet. May be implemented later in the software. It has a fixed exposure time currently, and it's 10 seconds. It sure could use some handles for lifting it up, but as somebody pointed out when I gave this talk elsewhere, the reason they can do that undoubtedly is it would disturb the sleek lines that they've built into the thing and make it look less handsome. They take subs as both RGB. It's got a one-shot color chip in it. So it takes them as RGB on one side of the mount and BGGR on the other. It took me a while to figure that out. I had a lot of very strange images until I figured out that that changes with the side of the mount when you're imaging on the eastern sky or the western sky. It's obviously not fatal because virtually any imaging processing program can handle both of those separately, and then they can be put together later. And there's a lot of difficulty in taking calibration subs. You can just throw a blanket over to take your darks, but taking flats is not easy. Eventually, when you can point it at some arbitrary place in the sky, you can take what are called nighttime flats, and that'll be a big improvement. Right now, I just took my flats by trying to remove the stars from the images, and it works reasonably well. Not great. Okay, now I ask the question, what do all of these telescopes have in common? There's the ones that are in outer space or getting ready to go to outer space. There are large telescopes in domes, and even these small amateur telescopes. The one thing they all have in common is they have no eyepiece, and Stellina doesn't have an eyepiece either. So if you absolutely must have the ability to look through an eyepiece, sorry, this isn't going to work for you. But I do have a suggestion. If you get your tablet and a toilet paper roll and press the toilet paper roll against the tablet and look through the other end, you get the same experience as looking through an eyepiece. And you could use a low power eyepiece like a paper towel roll, or a higher power eyepiece like a toilet paper roll. Actually, I threw this slide in for another group where there's a person with a very large telescope who has never taken a picture in his life and says people who do are not astronomers. So sorry for that one. So the advantages of having no eyepiece are you don't have to bend and stoop and strain to get a view through an eyepiece that's in some odd position. And at my age, a really important one is I don't have to stand on some unstable ladder or step stool. There's no tangle of wires when you're trying to attach a camera to the eyepiece holder. There's no wires to the camera, no guiders, no computers, no power supplies, and no focuser to get in the way. Multiple people see the same thing at the same time, which you can't do with an eyepiece. There's no manual refocusing and focusing. People holding the tablets, whether they're farsighted, nearsighted, or 20/20, all they have to do is put on their glasses and it's simultaneously in focus for all of them. And each one doesn't look through your eyepiece and go, I don't see anything except this fuzzy stars. If you are in outreach and a toddler is held up to your eyepiece, there's no finger smudges from that toddler, and nobody reaches, grabs the eyepiece, or accidentally leans their eye against it and knocks your telescope off target. As the images accumulate, you get detail and color of deep sky objects that you wouldn't see in an eyepiece of most amateur telescopes. And the zoom, everybody can do it on their viewing device. Just take your iPad, put your thumb and forefinger together, and then spread them apart, and you can zoom right on in. Okay, and there's other things about it. If you have a smart TV, there are ways you might be able to hook it up to your TV and watch it from the comfort of your living room. It may not be as good as Big Bang Theory, but there it is. So here's a session with Stellina. First thing you do is attach the tripod. That takes you about 30 seconds. Place it on a firm base of some kind outside and level the tripod. There's another minute. You insert the battery and a USB drive if you're going to save your images. If you insert a USB drive, it knows you've done that and automatically saves the images. There's nothing else you have to do. You turn this telescope on and you press, by pressing the start button, which is on the side of the telescope. You start the app on your smart device and you connect to the hotspot that says Stellina and Stellina, and then you say begin, and Stellina opens, gets its geographic location by querying your phone or iPad or whatever you're using. It focuses, takes a picture, focuses, plate solves, and using its internal star charts, and it now knows where it is and where it's pointing, so it knows where to go when you select your target and tell it to go to that target. It then acquires the target, focuses on the target. It checks that it's centered the target, and it starts taking dithered colored pictures. calibrating them, stacking them, stretching them, and displaying them on all the connected devices. The devices are updated, all of them, after each capture. And as I said, 20 people can observe at the same time. One thing I've done is I've connected a monitor to a smart device. The smart device is being, the display of the smart device is being updated by the Stellina, and the smart device is connected to the monitor, so it's mirrored to the monitor, and it's a DC 5-volt monitor that is about 17 inches, so more people can just stand around and look at it. As I said, USB drive attached automatically causes FITS format files to be saved. So here's some pics that I took out of my backyard. Oh, these are pictures. Forget that. Jumped ahead too far. This is what some pictures I've taken of Stellina things. I found this street person and asked him to come into my house and pick up the Stellina, and he did that. And even though he's obviously quite ancient and feeble, he had no problem hefting it up there. Here it is sitting on the floor on its tripod. As I said, it's a short tripod, but it's very, very stable. And on the side of it, you insert the battery here. The cable is connected to the inside of the Stellina, and then you just bring the battery up to it, connect it, and put it into this. This is a recessed area that you put it in. You can put your USB drive into one of these ports in order to save FITS files, and that gives you one port that doesn't seem to have any use at this point. Obviously, they're planning something for the future. You go to the device on your smartphone or tablet, and it looks like this. It says you're not connected. You punch this little button. It says connect now. It tells you to turn on the Stellina, which you may or may not have already done. So you go to the next page. You push this button, and it opens your Wi-Fi settings on your device. And you can see the Stellina there. You select that and connect, as you do at any device. You then push the Initialize button. You go back to the app, and you push the Initialize button on the app, and that's when it gets its latitude, longitude here on Earth, as well as its right ascension and declination where it's pointed in the sky. It searches, when it opens up, it searches for the sky. A field of view recognizes stars. If it misses, if it opens up and can't find any, and it's nighttime, and on this first time I opened it up, it was looking into a tree. It doesn't matter. The Stellina automatically rotates around its azimuth axis by about 90 degrees and looks in that direction for stars. If it doesn't find any there, it rotates another 90 degrees and goes all the way around. And it even finds stars in rather bright twilight. I wait till I can see 2 or 3 stars in the sky, and it can, at that point, align itself. The app has targets you can select from. There's ones it recommends on the top line. Then there are constellations, all nebula, and this scrolls to the right through things like galaxies and clusters and what have you. If you punch, or you can put in coordinates, as I said. If you punch this nebula image there, then it brings up a page which has a whole list of nebulae to select some from. If you selected M1, for instance, ignore the fact that this was done when it wasn't connected. It brings up information that it's the Crab Nebula and it's the star explosion remnant, things to help the newcomer to the field. Or if you're doing outreach, you can bring that up anytime during the observation, for other people to read, or they can bring it up on their devices to read about the target that they're seeing. More trivia can be found on the next page. Now, you could just go out and start using this app as is to locate objects and start imaging them or viewing them. I usually use a planning tool like Astro Planner or Sky Tools or whatever is available on my Android device. But once I've printed what I'll do is I'll do that during daytime, obviously, print the plan, take it outside with me, and leave the PC at home inside. Okay, a little bit about subframe acquisition. I had to write to them to find this information out. All exposures are 10 seconds, but in an hour's worth of exposing time, you don't get 60 exposures for every minute. There's a lag time, and that lag time is while the computer is inside the telescope is processing the image for display. And if you're doing it at low resolution, no zoom, then there's a 7 to 8 minute lag in between image captures and presentations. That means you get about 34 minutes of exposure per hour. If it's fully zoomed in, then you're only processing, that's a digital zoom, so you're only processing about a quarter of the chip, and it's almost instantaneous. So you get your full 60 minutes per 60 minutes of exposure out of every hour if you're keeping them the subs for later processing. Here's what you see versus what you've got. This is a screen view of what would be on one of the devices. And that screen view can be captured. That is actually a TIFF, not a TIFF, a JPEG file being presented. But the JPEG is a conversion from the TIFF file internally. And so it takes this JPEG image, downsamples it to a TIFF file and displays it. And that's for purpose of displaying speed of display. But you can click on this image on your device and save it as a TIFF file, 16-bit TIFF. And of course, you can process that TIFF separately. So here's what the screen shows, and here's the processed version of what the screen shows. So even if you don't save individual images, you can save individual TIFF for each image and just process that. And everybody who's connected can do that. They can save the JPEG, that is exactly what they're seeing on the screen, or they can save the TIFF version behind that JPEG.
Alex, is that a full view or zoomed in?
I believe that's been cropped. I don't recall.
Okay.
This is off the Vaonis webpage. I didn't shoot this.
Oh.
Okay, so here's some examples of my captures. And before we start into that, I have all these excuses for why they're not great. At the time I took these, I had it had been 4 months since I ordered the Stellina and 2 months since I had it. And in those 2 months that I had the thing, there were 3 evenings with somewhat clear skies. I took these things at twilight. It was a bit breezy. And as you can see from the geometry of the scope, it's not exactly aerodynamic. There were high, thin clouds and a full moon. Furthermore, the targets I shot, for reasons I can't explain, were low over my rooftop. I can explain why they were low over my rooftop. I can't explain why I chose those targets. So I started the imaging as soon as the Stellina could find the targets in the sky. I took darks and flats as well as the lights as best I could take the calibration frames. And I did throw out bad frames. So these early frames that were taken really in almost daylight did not end up as part of the capture, the process frames. So here's my image of the Dumbbell Nebula from my backyard. This is 41 minutes. This is the TIFF file captured from the screen and not processed. Here's my processed version of that, actually somewhat over processed, but there you have it. Here is the JPEG capture after 10 minutes of the Trifid Nebula. And here's my processed version of 21 minutes, 26 minutes of capture. And here is the Hercules cluster. This again is fully processed, 41 minutes. So I tried a planet, and I told you it wasn't made for planets, and it surely isn't. This is obviously Jupiter, and it's 4 moons. I didn't even check where the moons were before I took the picture, but there they are. And there no stars were captured in the images. When it takes the planetary images, it takes only JPEGs, and I don't know what the speed of them is, but it acquires them quite rapidly. So there's certainly no more than 1 second, and maybe less than that. And this is only 22 subs put together for this. And so I'm only out of 28. So it might have been a good chance to do some lucky imaging, but I really didn't feel like I was going to get anything, and I was right. Anything worth spending a lot of time on. Okay, actually the best thing of all is watching the image as a crew. It's exciting to sit there, look at the device, and watch as the intensity grows, and the first frame arrives on the screen, and you squint and look this way and that way and use averted vision just like you would in an eyepiece to see the object. And after a few more images, you can find your target easily on your iPad, and more detail emerges with each successive image. And here, for instance, we're going to look at another example of the Orion image. This is after 1 image. The first image, oh, this is a bright thing. So the first image even looks quite remarkable, 10-second exposure. And here's 10 minutes and 20 seconds. There's a slider here on the side of every frame. There's labeled down here as 1, and in bold is 62. So this is showing the 60-second, 10-second capture, the 62 images put together. And any that were thrown out by the device are not listed in here as in a number. At any point, you can take this slider and you can slide it down and go back through the history of the acquisition. Go back and look at it at 1, and then slowly increase it and watch the intensity of the image grow as more and more images are added. So that's a nice, fun feature too. And of course, every individual on their own smart device can do that independently. There's an opportunity for lucky imaging with this device with 10-second exposures. That's a little long for true lucky imaging. For those of you who don't know, lucky imaging is usually used for planetary imaging, where literally thousands of single frames are captured, and then a small portion of them, perhaps a few hundred at most, are retained for image processing, hoping that those were captured at the very instant when the atmosphere was quiet, just for a very small fraction of a second. 10 seconds is not a very small fraction of a second. So whether you can do lucky imaging with this, I don't know. I haven't captured enough images of any one object yet to actually find out, but it's something to think about. Okay, they say they're going to come up with major software changes which will affect the Stellina, and hardware changes too. Now, one hardware change they're never going to come up with is a different chip. That's down there inside that scope, and I don't see how you take it apart. It's on an image rotator, so I think you're stuck with the chip you get at the time you buy it. But according to Vaonis, next year, they're going to have the ability to produce scheduling so that you could pick out 5, 10 targets for the night, set up the telescope, and it would take images of those targets, the number of images you selected for each individual target, and put those onto your thumb drive for later processing. And they're also going to have the ability to make unattended automatic mosaicing of up to 16 panels, probably 4 by 4. I don't know whether there'll be any flexibility in that. They're going to have expert mode camera controls. Those are the words they use. I'm not sure what they mean. Probably things like you won't be limited to taking 10-second exposures. You'll be able to specify the exposure. And they also say mystically it's going to have HDR image processing, and true HDR, where multiple exposure lengths are combined, or synthetic HDR, as many programs produce. I don't know. They're going to have a solar filter for white light observing, and clearly that would require that the telescope operate during daylight, which it doesn't currently do, which would also give you a chance to take flats. And they say it's going to connect to the internet for live sharing. I'm not sure how that's going to be accomplished, since my smart devices only connect to one Wi-Fi at a time. And if they're connected to the Stellina, that doesn't leave anything to connect to a Wi-Fi to broadcast to social media. And they're going to have smart battery, which will be nice because it'll tell you how, on your device what remaining time you have on your battery. There are rumors, maybe they're just hopes, that narrowband filters may also be produced. But remember, you have one-shot color here, and narrowband filters on one-shot color are not very efficient, but still be nice to have. Okay, is there any competition? As far as I know, there's only one thing that performs anything like the Stellina, and it's called an EV scope. And Unistellar makes it, and it's going to start making another one, or maybe it has already started, called Equinox. This is a 4.5-inch reflector, which sounds good compared to the 3-inch Stellina, until you find out that it's f10. So it has more apparent light gathering power, but that's offset by the long F ratio. So it actually ends up capturing about half as many photons per unit area of the sensor as compared to Stellina, which means you'd have to double any Stellina capture time to make the same kind of image. It doesn't have autofocus, which Stellina has. There's no image rotator. And the images I've seen taken with this device are all circles rather than rectangles. I'm not sure whether that's because they don't have a way, I guess that's because they don't have a way to compensate for image rotation, so they just trim it to a circle. The chip inside has 1.3 megapixels, whereas Stellina has 6.4 megapixel. It saves the stacked resulting image to your phone or tablet. It cannot save the raw images, so you can't do image processing from the ground up. The EV scope has an eyepiece, but it's not an eyepiece at all. It's like looking through a toilet paper tube at a screen, because it's just a screen that the onboard computer broadcasts to. And at the bottom of this eyepiece tube is that screen, and that's what you're looking at. They're going to make the Equinox with no eyepiece. It costs $3,000 as opposed to Stellina's $4,000. For me, that doesn't seem to be a competitor at all. Okay. The good news for those of you who want something a little less expensive is they're going to come out with a Vespera. It's next year. It's a 50 millimeter, so it's only got a 2-inch lens. It's going to be f5, 2 groups of 2 lanthanum glass elements in each. So it's quite a high quality objective. 1.6 degree field of view, up to 5 cool users instead of 20, but it's only going to be $1,500. Earlier this year, or was it last year? I think it was toward the end of last year. They ran a Kickstarter for this with the hopes of getting $600,000. They got $2.5 million. And those who bought into the Kickstarter will get the first deliveries. Those first deliveries are scheduled for this December. I was number 3 to kick in my $1,000, which is what it took to buy in. And so I'm hoping to get my Vespera early December. For the rest of the people, general public, it'll probably be fall of 2022. Okay, so is Stellina worth it? With the lack of mental and physical stress and high portability, instant gratification in terms of both images and images to process. It's reasonable subframe quality, and I think reasonable value for the money. And by the way, I often subscribe to telescopes, and to subscribe to a telescope and get the images produced, which is also obviously a low effort. All you have to do is download them and then process them. That can run $2,000 to $4,000 a year. So $4,000 for Stellina doesn't sound that bad. I think Astronomy Club should purchase one of these for their outreach events. There appears on their website to be a discount available for STEM organizations. The other night, I had 2 teens over to the house. We set up the Stellina, and they sat there captivated watching the images appear on the screen. They were so entranced that they didn't even take out their phones and start texting for the entire time. So I was amazed. Well, this is a picture of the moon taken through a Stellina. Again, that's not really its strong point, but I thank you for your attention, and we'll be happy to try to answer any of your questions.
All right. Good
I'll
job, Alex.
I'll relinquish this. No, I'll hold the screen in case we have to go back somewhere.
Yeah.
That was very good and very thorough.
I have a couple questions, Alex.
Yeah.
Can you aim at objects that are not in its internal catalog?
If you have the right ascension and declination, yes.
So that's how you go to a comet or asteroid or something.
Yeah,
Okay.
no problem.
But you can't. That'd be the only way you could compose an image. If you wanted the nebula to be off to one side or not centered, you'd have to have the RA and DEC, right?
No. Part of the app, it opens up, and it on the app you can rotate the field of view or offset the field of view as you want within the app. I've never tried it, so I'm not sure what results you get doing that, but there's a mechanism for doing it.
Okay.
Alex, does any type of processing work? I know you use the Pix Insight, but can you process it with any type of iOS software?
Yeah, sure. Anything that takes a FITS file and does Astro-Image processing would work, or anything where you could batch convert your FITS to something else like TIFF. If you batch convert it first, then all the plugins for Photoshop, for instance, work, and AstroPixel processor works. I think all the programs that are designed specifically for Astro-Imaging, as well as the add-ons in Photoshop. And there's also out there now, which one is it? There's it's not Aurora. There's a general photographing image processing program. Let me bring up something here on my own screen. I don't know if you'll see this or not, but certainly not that. It's my list of programs that I use. And so I'm going to try to, this Luminar. Luminar AI does image processing now. And for about $60, you can buy this program that will align, stack, and do everything for your program. And it accesses FITS files. I've not used it to do ground up image processing like that, but I've seen image process with it, and it does a very, very credible job, apparently. So for $60, you can get and there's free now, a free image processing program too. I don't recall its name right now. But,
Thank you.
yeah.
Any other questions? Well, it sounds like if you want this, you have to order it now to get it for Christmas, right, Alex?
Yeah, order it now and you'll have it by Christmas. Yep. I think, I ordered mine through OptCorp here, and it took a little while, but it was smooth and effortless. Okay, I'm going to try to unshare. I can't seem to get back to. How do I get out of this now? Oh, here it is. Stop sharing. There we go.
Thank you. All right. Anybody have questions or comments or images they'd like to get help with or share? We've got a few minutes left here in the hour.
Hey, Greg, this is Kevin Cook. I just want to echo the comments that were online about Doug's M33 image. That's going to become my benchmark when I try to get my process to look anything close to his.
Okay. Doug, are you with us here? I think he's here, but he's muted right now.
Sorry, I said you guys are too kind. You should feel free to just beat the crap out of those images. Okay, I don't need people to say it's a nice image. I need people to say what I need to be working on.
Hey, can I see it?
Well, aren't you on the email list, Paul?
I don't know.
Go to the TAAA forum and look for that email. It's there. And if you can't find it, then send me an email and I'll send you a separate copy.
Okay.
So Doug, when you did that image, you said you added more data to it. So you took it in multiple sessions?
Yeah, I did. All of my images are taken in multiple sessions. I think the specs on that one, I probably have spread out over 2 years and 5 or 6 nights anyways. Early last year when I just started, I started taking images at -5C for 30 seconds. And then I, figured out that, well, I really should be cooling the camera more and I should be taking longer exposures. And so almost all my exposures now are 45 seconds for DSO work, unless it's globulars or star clusters. I still stick to 30 seconds, but I'm using -15 summer and winter on the camera.
Kevin, did you have other questions about the image?
Well, I wonder if this means Doug is no longer going to try to persuade me I should be just taking 10-second subs.
I never told you to take 10-second subs, buddy, but I think that maybe 3-minute subs, you might not have to go that long. The downside now is that I'm getting up there where I'm taking 300 to 400 sub exposures, and that takes a while in PixInsight to crank through those, especially if you're doing any kind of special processing, right? So if I wind up doing a deconvolution, that takes a while, right?
Yeah.
But you just modify your processing strategy, and what you do is you just kick it off and go eat or something, right? And then come back later. So but it definitely is taking longer now to get more images. But I definitely find that, there's no excuse for exposure, right? Exposure time and integration time. So from my perspective, originally Alex was the one I think who pointed out that I was leaving too much on the table when I was, showing you guys these 30-minute exposures, right, at f2.2. And I thought the images looked reasonable, but if you take 4 hours at f2.2, you're getting enough data. And who knows, maybe next year when I decide that I need 6 hours instead of 4 hours, it'll be a different story. But I do think that 3 to 4 hours at f2.2 is good enough. So that's my thought today.
Well, it's interesting that the Stellina decided to go with 10 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, when I heard that, I was thinking that is so short, and especially since there's a filter in there, right? You think, any kind of filtered exposure at only 10 seconds. I wonder about that.
Yeah,
I
but
think part
remember
of
it's an Altaz mount, so it's not tracking, or it's tracking but rotating.
But you still got a photon problem through the filter. So it's amazing that it produces what it does in only 10 seconds through a filter. That's pretty interesting.
I think the objective they had, well, part of it was to update screens fairly quickly so that at something like an outreach, people could stand there and see the image coming to life in real time. So I think that's part of the justification for the shorter exposures. And like I said, they're going to have some flexibility, I think, in that coming year, where you're going to get to select your own exposures. We'll see. And the filter that it's going through is a light
pollution. Yeah. So
it's
broadband.
It's not blocking most of the light. It's blocking the sodium vapor and
sure, mercury and yeah. Still, though, I mean, if you think about it, it'd be interesting to know at the lowest level what the signal to noise ratio calculations are for 10-second exposure on a 3-inch aperture. That would be interesting to see how they, I mean, they're doing it and the images look good, so it's working, but it's just a little surprising.
I think the thing too is the CMOS chips are getting more and more quantum efficiency, and so you can get away with shorter exposures. Though 10 seconds, that wouldn't be what I would select. But then they've done so much research on this. They have some reason for making that the standard. I don't know what it is, but they're very responsive. So I guess you can write and say, why did you do that?
Alex, one of the things that kind of amazed me from the images you showed was the color. Do they do any sort of calibration for star color or nebula color?
No, but I do.
But
So
I mean,
if they're processed images, I mean, they do a color balance internally. That's what they have. Their algorithms internally are not the same as we use in Astro-Imaging. They, for instance, what they have is, as far as I can tell, is a simple multiplier for the channels. They multiply the blue and green channels by a fixed factor and blend them with the green, blue and red channels with a fixed different factor for each one, and then blend it with the green channel and produce the color image. And it's pretty good color. I tried using the factors that they use, and I don't get such good good images out. So I don't know what they're really doing inside.
So, but they're not doing any sort of mapping to star fields or anything like that to come up with the correct colors?
No. I mean, you can do that afterward, obviously, programs, but they don't do that up front. They multiply red by 0.6 and blue by 0.7 and add it to green times 1. And there they come out with that image. I think that's what they say they do. But like I said, I can't reproduce that. So
did any of the images you experimented with, did they have weird colors or did they all come out pretty decent?
You mean on the screen as you look?
Well, yeah,
Yeah, on the screen, they all look good. When you process the images from the raw data, they're like any set of images, unless you take apart the RGB from the one-shot color and process each individually and then put them back together. The images come out with a very strong blue cast to them. But as soon as you do a color calibration against the stars, that goes away.
You know, you think about it, if it's doing plate solving to locate where it's pointing, it could almost, if it had enough computing power and database built in, do the color calibration like PixInsight does for that star field.
Yeah.
And sort of, you know, inherently sort of spit out a process. If it knows it's pointing at Orion, it knows what the star field colors are supposed to be.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing
brings
there,
that into the processing.
yeah, I think the thing is that's time again. They want to get the images out to the screen as fast as they can. That was kind of their purpose. And so,
True.
yeah, you can do that. I don't see why not. But
It would take a lot of computing power to do it quickly.
yeah, they have a little Pi computer in there on board, and that's doing all the work.
very interesting. Okay, any other comments or questions?
So maybe just a quick note. I see some CAC imagers out there, and I'll just remind you guys that I did put up the CAC image display. It's up and running now at CAC. And so if you've got pictures that you want on that display, send me some pictures. I've got some of Paul's on there and mine are in there, but we're the only two so far. And I'm sure that I know lots of other people are taking pictures out of CAC. So if you want some pictures out there, let me
Yeah,
know.
I'm going to be joining you over October 8th and 9th. And
Yeah, I saw.
I'm going to be there for 4 nights again.
Yep. I haven't seen Kevin or Alan out there lately. What's the scoop with you guys? What's holding you back? Kevin, you're not golfing too much.
No, but my wife's traveling in October. I'm traveling in November, so my first CAC window of opportunity is not going to be till December.
Burr, that sounds like I'll miss you.
It's a nice long night then.
Very.
All right, well, thank you everyone for your participation. If there's no other comments or questions, we can wrap it up for tonight. Tom.
First of all, I'm going to apologize for being late. I've had just so many things going on lately that it's been really difficult to get anywhere on time. But Greg and I have talked about making the third Monday of the month the standard meeting time. And we thought we'd bounce that off you guys and see how you think about that. Any comments?
Oh, I'm okay with it.
Yep.
Works fine.
Okay, so we'll
course,
standardize. We'll standardize on that.
First, when it gets to be, we get to the time when the new moon cycles into that time. Well, you know, I may or may not be out at CAC on them. Of course, I can still catch you from anywhere in the country or in the world. So
That'll work. All right. So Greg, that's where we'll go.
All right. Okay, everyone, thanks, and keep posting those images.
Yep.
well,
All right.
yeah.
Good night.
Okay.
Take care, everybody.
Did you post all of mine or just